Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We're going to continue our conversation about relationships and how to navigate them and what makes them different, and particularly the close relationships, why people do what they do, how to analyze who you're with and what they're all about. This guy helps couples and individuals do this all the time. Paul Zohav is a guy who's got a master's degree in counseling from the University of Virginia. He works with lots of different people trying to figure this stuff out with them. And we're going to bring him back in here. Paul, welcome. How are you?
I'm well. It's now the worst of winter is over, at least here in southern Arizona. Maybe not where you are. We're not, we might see a dusting of snow on the top of the highest hill. That's about as much as snow. We haven't had snow at all this year.
Wow. In the New York area, we went 700 and something days without any real snow. We got like 3 inches about a week or two ago, but it's lighter later here. So it's, I'm getting that feeling that, spring is coming, bring it on. Doesn't matter what season it is. We still have to navigate relationships. And we talked a lot about important things last time we got together. Love languages, right? That was a part of it.
Yes. That's in our dashboard for marriage, for relationships. We have skills, which is yes, ands, and seems. We have mutual awareness of each other's love languages. And today we'll dig into their personality types and the difference that makes. And when you put the love languages next to personality types, we have a significant advantage in our dancing together for the rest of our lives.
Before we dig into this, is this somewhat fluid? Meaning, do people change from time to time and it can vary a little bit? Or is what we are typically what we are?
Well, when you've taken the test at 16personalities.com, you'll receive a report. And there'll be, for instance, introvert or extrovert. And there's a percentage that goes along with that. And it seems to me over the course of a lifetime, the percentage might change, but the basic orientation, the way we process the world, tends to remain the same. And of course, if the percentage is somewhere between 50 and 55, 60%, that means you're kind of an ambivert. It means you can be happy with friends and you can be happy at home. So the percentage is useful. So you'll take the quiz without overthinking the questions, because if you're like me, I can find three right answers in a multiple choice. It's not really worth arguing with the questions. Whatever your first reaction is, go with that. And they'll send you a report with 4 letters and 4 percentages. And with all the couples I worked with, you get older, you can move towards the middle. It's been said. I tend to be analytical. I'm a thinker, much like Sheldon in Big Bang Theory, or Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady, as an example. However, after living enough years, you are less your type and you get to move towards the middle, to answer your question. So you'll have 4 letters and 4 percentages. Introvert and extrovert, that's easy because some people thrive on social interaction. They have friends, lots of friends, sometimes a lot of friends. They prioritize spending time with friends. They get energy from friends. And after an evening out, they come home with more energy than they left. And then there's people who are introverts. That's me. And I deal with people in small batches. And for example, one couple came to me and he was a 99% extrovert. He sings in a rock band. Makes perfect sense. But then there are people who are 99% introvert. And in this case, she lives her life within 20 feet of the outside of her house. She has her garden and cats and books and music and internet and cable. She travels relatively infrequently, so she pays her auto insurance by the mile. And she's more self-generated, as am I. I can be on my own indoor all day long and never having gone out once. And that will not be upsetting. But a couple came to me and she said, I'm the only introvert in a family of extroverts, said she. And I knew they loved me. That was clear. They loved me. But I never belonged. but never felt I belonged because they are all extroverts. I wanted quiet time. They are get up and go time. So introvert, extrovert. And if you happen to be an extrovert married to an introvert and you have children, then the extrovert comes home from work, gathers up the children, takes them out to the park or to the pizza place, and the introvert is able to regenerate themselves from all the energy they put out over the course of the day. It's important and relatively uncomplicated. You get to make time for the person and their energy levels. Then there's sensor, letter S, or N, letter for intuitives. And sensors, 3 out of 4 people tend to be sensors, and they're focused on how to do life. But the intuitives are interested in why is it that way? They're reflective, they're introspective. The act of thinking is inherently pleasurable. The sensor follow policies, procedures, rules, regulations, manuals, and recipes. They want to know how. If the preacher says God commands us all to do X, they say thank you, because now they know how to be spiritual. They want recipes. But intuitives, like myself, will say to the preacher, that was a fascinating sermon, Pastor. I'll have to think about that. I'll come back to you later with questions, because it has to make sense to me, and I look for things to make sense. I'm more interested in preventing domestic violence than treating it. So I have a whole 30 years of why is it this way? And we have marriage and communication today because of all the work I've done over the past 30 years. The next letter pair is thinkers and feelers. Thinkers, I'm one of them, tend to encounter life cognitively, intellectually. I want to know, why is it this way? How else could it be? However, I'm married to a feeler who it engages with life, feeling how she feels about it. So if I was a classic thinker, I'd say, what's the big deal? It's a yes or no question. Why are we spending so much time on this? And the feeler spouse says, well, don't know how I feel about that. I'll have to sit with that for a while and then I'll go back to you. So the thinker spouse is upset. The feeler spouse is also upset because it sounds like you don't care about her or her feelings or his feelings. And so the relationship starts to sink. Thinkers and feelers. When you're choosing a house, you have to honor all thoughts about the house, all how they feel about the house, and together you get a full buy-in on which house you ultimately choose. The last letter pair I find fascinating. It's called judgers or perceivers. I'm not sure why they name things judgers or perceivers, but the letter J, the judger, is planful. They like to have their ducks in a row. They need to know as much as possible ahead of time so they can produce the result they want. They are very planful. They make plans. They don't mind changing plans in the middle of the world, but they tend to be able to be happiest mostly knowing why they're doing what they're doing. They'll shop with a shopping list. They'll keep a shopping list. They will not go to the store without a shopping list. And when they go to the store, they got it, get it, and gone. They don't linger. Job accomplished. They've achieved the task of shopping. Me, for instance, I am to the experiential experience of shopping. I'll go up and down aisles just to see what's there. In Costco, I'll stop and taste all those interesting things. And when we're together, Rita, my spouse, and I tend to have 2 shopping carts. She gets the list. She's into the accomplishment of shopping. And I'm into like, oh, that's ripe. That's on sale. That's a new product. Let's get some of that. And she'll call me from the other end of Costco and say, I'm ready to check out, says she. I say, yes, and remember, yes, and I'll meet you at the checkout stand in 5 minutes. She gets everything we need. I get all the rest of the good stuff. When I say, let's go somewhere, she always wants a destination because she wants to know whether it's shoes or sandals, hat or no hat, sunscreen, no sunscreen. And when she has enough information to anticipate what we're going to be doing and how it feels, we go out and have quality time together. As easy as that. Feelers and thinkers. There's an extra tweak. Because judges and thinkers, they like to know when it's going to be. They don't want to forget. And sometimes they marry people like me who tend to go with the flow, spontaneous. And so how do we deal with that, my spouse and I? Well, she'll put something in her calendar. It'll show up on my calendar. So I never forget. Forgetting is an awful experience for judges. I'm more spontaneous. Sure, let's change our mind. Let's do something else. So as long as it shows up on my calendar, it's in sight and in mind, whereas my tendency is toward out of sight, out of mind. There's an entire unit on how to use a calendar that really allows judges, thinkers, feelers to have harmony rather than frustration. The last thing I'll mention at this point is that a perceiver might say, I'll handle it soon, trust me. However, that does not work for the judger. When they hear something as indefinite as that, they know they have to do it themselves just to make sure it gets done. If, however, I say, I'll handle it by Friday, that works. There's a tab in the browser, it's something on the calendar, and the judger spouse, which I have one, can turn over and roll over and go back to sleep. So things have to be in time. Without them being time, they don't exist in the way a judger looks at the world. This is fascinating. But, I have one couple. She thinks he's lying to her. She's the judger, he's the perceiver. And he can keep his word for about a week at a time. However, then he forgets and he spaces it out. And she says, I can't rely on anything you say. With a calendar system, a dashboard for their marriage, it doesn't get forgotten. It's right up there in front, in sight, in mind. And so the judger doesn't have to worry. Or even like, remember this, you have to remember that. Don't forget this, because it's up there. We all have decided that it belongs. So that's just a brief overview. But when you put that next to love languages, because my spouse is an extrovert. She loves being out there with people. She's also a judger. So she's very planful. She's a teacher. She plans curriculums and lessons. And once you put the love languages and personality types together, it's easy to dance together. Not about compatibility, it's about responsibility. And being aware of your love languages and personality types is essential.
Lots of questions here. And thank you. I mean, it's fascinating when you think in terms of people and with yourself and what they might be. Paul, do you find that people seek people for what they're not? For example, introvert may find an extrovert kind of living vicariously, if you will, through them, and vice versa. Do you think that happens from time to time, or more times
Certainly.
than not?
My spouse is the social one. Yesterday, we hung out with about 3 other couples. And I enjoy the opportunities of being married to a extroverted social person. And if I'm not up to it, I say, yes, I would rather do it another day. So yes, and thinkers tend to marry feelers. Because thinkers might have a black and white life, whereas feelers have a more technicolor life. And so why a thinker is often attracted to this bright, vivacious, vital person who is a feeler. And so I get to enjoy that part of reality, being married to a feeler, which I am. So there's a lot of synergy. We could say that we're only designed to see 180 degrees of life. We are like horses. We are front-looking people. However, a lot of us have a tendency to know that if we don't see it, it doesn't exist. But I with my spouse, she sees that. I see behind her. And together we have a 360-degree life. It's also an attempt because, you might say, well, it doesn't exist. I don't see it. And they'll say, yes, but right behind your head, there's something else. So between the two of us, we have more life available. And I think that's part of the attraction. of marrying to someone with a significantly different personality type. And if you go to 16personalities.com and take the quiz, you'll get to know yourself better. You'll get to know them better. And together we can make the choices, the ways of being and acting that allows us to dance. Some personalities get along better with others. In fact, even at your report that you would get from 16personalities.com, they'll talk about good careers for people who are compatible with. Now, it's not etched in stone, but some of the couples I see have to get to be responsible, because when you're a judge or married to a perceiver, it's worth knowing that. It's a longer conversation, which is why it's 5 sessions when they come to see me, but we get to tear out walls and cabinets and lay new floors such that when we're done, they have a house they'd like to live in for the rest of their lives.
So I will say 16 personalities. I did it a while ago, probably 7 years ago. It's been around for a little bit. I don't remember what the results were, so got to go back there. It does take time. So don't think you're going to go there and check a bunch of boxes and then, okay, this is what I am, this is what my partner is, and we're good to go. It takes a while to go through that. And in what you're saying in terms of different personality types, I feel that I'm a mix of you and your wife, because I'm extroverted, but sometimes introverted. I wouldn't say I'm a full extrovert. Maybe 60, 70% I am, but I like my alone time as well. But I'm analytical, but I'm also a feeler. Like I ride on emotions, but many times I say, I'm just looking at the facts here. So the emotions don't get into play or get in the way. But if I were to walk into a grocery store, I have the list, bam, 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 I'm out the door.
That's why the percentages are significant. So I'm hearing you're not a 55% something, you're 65 or 70% something. It's really more for the informational. It's not the truth. It's a model. It's a way we get to quantify and understand people in the world. I am pretty good at feelings these days, though my initial take is to figure what's going on here. That's why I go there first. But I'm aware of the emotional world after these now going to be 74 years. And so the percentages shift. Let's put it that way. Over the course of a lifetime, if you start out as a 70, by the time you're my age, you might be more of a 50 or 60.
Oh, then that answers what I said before, asked before, that it's kind of a moving target. As life goes on, it changes. It's not always going, you're not going to go to 16 personalities 7 years ago, and what it said there is what you are now. And I guess that's the important part, because we need to evolve in life. I'm also thinking too, if you can't identify what your spouse or partner is, not a good thing. Like if you're watching this or listening to this and thinking, yeah, my spouse is, I'm not really sure. I guess they're more extroverted, but are they this? Are they that? Especially in newer relationships, you might not know, but this is a way to know.
When you know your personality type, without personality types and love languages, you're dancing in the dark.
Yeah.
You're going to trip over the furniture. You're going to trip over each other.
Yeah.
But why not create a mutual awareness that allows us to gravitate towards those ways of being and acting that leave us more us at the end of the day? It's really not much more complicated than that. So this is high quality, informative information that over the hundreds of couples I've seen has proven to be a real eye-opener. And we also know from our experience that in love languages, also you can find the roots of infidelity. Because I see maybe a third of the couples that come to me have some experience of infidelity, which is a symptom, not a cause. And the symptom and the cause may be they like to be quality time, you like to have time to yourself. And so once you know who you're married to, who you're in a relationship with, or who your children are, you're highly likely to make the proper choices that leave us with more access to life rather than less. And if you're professional, like if professionals are good at this, they're probably acts of service. That's what they do. They when your couple comes to you and say, I want this $100,000 house in a $500,000 house neighborhood, the real estate agent says, yes, let's look at all the details and find out the rest best for you. And if they're talking to a thinker, they say mortgages, amortization, costs, budget, tax, implications. But to the spouse who's a feeler, you say, bring lots of candy at Halloween because there's so many kids in this neighborhood and they all go to this wonderful elementary school just a block away. So you speak feeler to a feeler and thinker to a thinker, and you sell them a house. And once you know who your spouse is, then you get to choose the language appropriate to being heard and the language of communication. Otherwise, it's kind of a crapshoot.
Well, we said last time or time before that when we got together in that if you do sales or you run a team, this is so important to identify what I want to call who your audience is. Your audience could be one. It's your wife or your husband. It could be that. Love language. What was the website that we go for that?
5lovelanguages.com/quiz.
Gotcha.
You can do it without doing the reading. I'd recommend doing the reading aloud together, taking turns, because that's the way we educate one another.
Gotcha.
If you read it by yourself, you know more. When you read it together, you be more. And there's one chapter on each of the 5 love languages. And you'll be able to read yourself into the example of the couples that he sees, that Gary Chapman sees. And you'll say, oh, yeah, I'm like that. Oh, yeah, you're like that. Oh, my mother's definitely like that. And you'll have a whole new prescription glasses to which you can see the world.
Or I think just as important when you read it together, what your spouse partner thinks you are, sees you.
Yeah. I'll pick a restaurant she likes. She'll pick a restaurant I like. So that's love languages. And it's it's kind of funny in many. Maybe our next call will be about language, the importance of language. But it's very clear that when she says now and I say now, it's not the same now. Her now is now. You said you wanted to go. Let's go. The dog's on the leash. I got my coat on. Let's head out the door. But my now is like now-ish. And she knows that when I say let's get going, it could take an extra 5 minutes. I'll find something. Oh, you have to do this. Then we'll be ready to go. So even though it's NOW, but we mean very vastly different things when we both use it. We'll talk about the importance of language. It's very important.
Why do you think that some couples will say, like, for example, let's say it's your wife. Paul knows me. It's like he's reading my mind. He knows exactly what I'm thinking. Why is that?
Well, it has to do with wisdom. I mean, you have intelligence, and you've had intelligence for a very long time, but wisdom has to do with experience. And things that might have irritated us in the past no longer irritate us. And when she's talking about something, there's also a peculiarity of personality types that some of our sensors tend to think out loud. They process out loud just to hear themselves think. But most of my processing is internal. Not a whole lot gets out. So once you know that, it's just not irritating. They are who they are, and you love them for who they are and who they're not. It's all about compatibility. It's not so much about being right. It's about being related and communicating.
When you said a second ago that if things that bother somebody don't bother anymore, right away that resonated with me because I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I used to let things bother me here and there. Now it's like, I don't really care. It's all right. Don't even worry about it. People say, I'm so sorry that I wasn't there on time. I don't really care.
And if you make a mistake, you say yes. And remember we were talking about last week? Your partner has a yes and place. Yes. And remember last week we talked about, and it's on the calendar. So things that might have invoked a reaction no longer invoke reactions longer than it takes to say yes.
Right.
Yes, we've talked about this. Remember what we talked about? And then you communicate.
100%. Good stuff. learning a lot here. And again, these websites are free and your relationship's future. And then once you figure it out, then you're there with the program that you have is 5 90-minute sessions that
Correct.
will keep you together. Keep you together. How important. How do we find more about that?
Well, one, you can contact me and see what I have at marriageandcommunication.com, including recordings that we had today will be posted. So if you thought, what did you say about this? You'll be able to see this recording on the video tab of marriageandcommunication.com. Contact me. I can help people all over the world as long as we aligned our time zones. I have helped people in Austria. I have people in Florida, Ohio, and in Canada, Calgary. So really, it's all available. It's a very powerful, effective program. In 5 sessions, you'll make it together for the rest of your lives.
I love how you set the expectations like you should do in any relationship, in that 5 sessions, 90 minutes, that's what I got for you. And same thing with the 2 websites, the personality quiz and the love languages. You know what to expect. Go through it, take the time. Don't watch Netflix tonight. This is more important. Paul, great having you on here. Really appreciate it. And always looking forward to learning more next time we get together.
Next week, we have it'll be about language and how critical the words we choose. We'll learn about going from a have to life to a get to life.
Love it.
Very different kind of life. And all we did was swap 2 letters. Next week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for being here again, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.